Hey, Wide Awake family. If you're not part of the family yet and love creepy stories, then hit that subscribe button and join us. Tap the bell icon so you'll never miss a story. It really helps out the channel. If you've already done all that, then smash that like button to lock it in, and please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story.
So yeah, I wasn't even supposed to go on this date. My best friend basically dared me to, because I've been in my I hate dating era for months. She found the guy swiped right from me and said, just one dinner, you don't even have to shave your legs. The guy's name was Mark, and he looked like a soft-spoken, skater-type dude in his pics. Messy hair, hoodie, slightly crooked smile. Not my usual, but kind of interesting. We arranged to meet at this ramen place across town. Not too fancy, not too grimy. Kind of perfect if things got awkward fast. I got there early and took one of the side booths, hoping to scope him out before he spotted me. The place had low lighting and these weird murals on the walls, like cats wearing kimonos and fighting with chopsticks. I remember that detail clearly because I was staring at one of them when someone sat down across from me and said my name. I turned, smiled out of reflex, and then my whole body just tensed. It was not Mark. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. He looked nothing like the photos. Gone was the cute, messy hair, the shy smile. This guy had greasy, thinning hair slicked back, thick glasses, and skin so pale it looked like he lived underground. And his teeth. Oh God. They were like uneven tombstones, yellow and cramped. Not one thing matched the profile, not even close. I just stared for a second too long, and then gave him this tight, fake smile like maybe I was the one who got it wrong. He immediately started talking like rapid fire. I couldn't even keep up. Something about the train being late and how the lighting in the restaurant was too yellow and how he didn't like ramen but came because he wanted to make me comfortable. I kept blinking, nodding, trying to mentally plan an escape. I checked my phone under the table. No signal, of course. Always the case when I need to text someone an emergency emoji. Then he drops it. Casual as anything. He says the photos on his profile were actually of his cousin because he wanted girls to give him a chance without judging the surface. I stared at him, stunned. Not because he admitted it, but because he seemed so proud of it. I was supposed to be impressed by the honesty. I sort of laughed, more out of shock than anything. But he didn't laugh. He leaned in and said I owed him a chance because he made the effort to be there and book the table and even wore cologne. I couldn't smell any cologne. It was just sweat and something sour, like old milk. At that point, I stood up. I wasn't dramatic about it or anything. Just enough movement to signal this was not happening. But he put his hand on the table, flat, and just stared at me, his face completely blank. He said it again, that I owed him. I told him I was leaving. Kept my voice chilled, didn't raise it, didn't cause a scene. I just walked toward the door like I was going to the bathroom, but I veered off once I hit the entrance. I wasn't running, just fast walking. Halfway down the street, I turned the corner and called a cab. As I stood there waiting, I felt my phone buzz. Then buzz again. 5 messages in a row, all from him. The first one said, wow. The next, didn't think you were one of those girls. Then, you can't treat people like that. And, I hope you know karma exists. Last one, I saw where you went. That one made me freeze. I looked up and scanned the street. Normal stuff. Takeaway shops. People walking dogs. A couple standing by a lamppost arguing about sushi. But then I spotted him. Standing at the corner of the ramen place. Not walking. Just watching me. He didn't move. Just stared. Holding his phone like he'd been texting with both thumbs. I told the cab driver to step on it the second I got in. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. 2 nights later, I'm out with friends, totally trying to laugh it off. I go to the bar to get a drink, and my phone buzzes again. Different number. Nice dress, it said. I looked around. Nobody suspicious. Nothing weird. But I felt the creeping paranoia. I asked one of the bartenders to walk me outside when I left. He didn't argue. Said I looked pale. I blocked the number. Changed my settings to private on every app I could think of. Locked down my socials. Made a whole thing of warning my friends not to give my info to anyone. A week passed. Quiet. Then my best friend, the one who dared me to go on the date, sent me a screenshot. A new dating profile. Same cousin pics. Different name. Same guy. She reported him. I did too. Not sure if anything came of it. But sometimes if I walk past that raw men place, I catch myself glancing inside. I don't even like raw men anymore. I just want to make sure he's not sitting at a booth waiting. Like I said, I wasn't even supposed to go on that date. I should have trusted my gut the second I pulled up outside the restaurant. I was already a little annoyed because traffic had been awful, and I had circled the block 3 times before finding a tight parking space I had to parallel into like I was on my driving test again. My shirt was wrinkled from the seatbelt, and my mouth was dry because I hadn't eaten all day trying to save room for dinner. Dumb, I know. Anyway, the place she picked wasn't even that nice. Just one of those mid-tier joints with those fake candles on the tables and laminated menus that try way too hard to look fancy. But I figured whatever, low pressure, casual vibes. I'd been messaging her for like 2 weeks. She seemed cool, kind of sarcastic, a little chaotic in a fun way. She had these little voice notes she'd send where she'd giggle halfway through her sentences. It felt real, not forced. So yeah, I should have actually kind of hopeful. I stepped in and scanned the place expecting to see her waving or standing awkwardly near the bar. Nope. What I saw instead made me stop in the doorway like I'd walked into the wrong movie. There she was, front table, right near the window, wearing this shiny pink jacket like a walking birthday balloon. But she wasn't alone. She had 5 other girls with her, all crammed into this round table, already halfway through a bottle of Prosecco, laughing like they'd just crashed a hen party. They spotted me instantly. She gave me a little wave like I was late to my own party or something. The rest of them just stared. Some of them nodded. One girl full-on smirked. I stood there for a second too long. Someone behind me bumped into my back trying to get in, so I had no choice but to move forward. I walked over slowly, trying to act casual, even though my stomach was doing flips. I kept telling myself maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe they'd just been out already. Maybe she invited me to join for a minute before they left. Nope. She scooted over and made space for me between her and one of her friends. I sat down like an idiot. The table was covered in menus, empty glasses, makeup bags, and 2 phones blasting some TikTok clip on mute. They'd all stared at me like they were sizing me up. Not in a mean way. Just expectant. And she didn't say much either. Just leaned in, said I looked better in person, and went back to sipping her drink. No apology, no heads up, nothing. It was like this had always been the plan and I'd just missed the memo. So there I was, sandwiched between strangers, trying to play it cool. One of the girls asked me what I did for work, and before I even finished my sentence, another one cut in asking if the food here was any good because they were starving. The waitress came over, and without skipping a beat, all 6 of them started ordering. Starters, mains, cocktails, shots. I hadn't even picked up my menu yet. I tried to laugh it off like maybe this was a weird joke. Like maybe they were all gonna eat quick and bounce, and then she and I would actually go do something. But no. As the food started coming out, plates piling up, sauces dripping off the edges, cocktails with plastic animals dangling from the straws, I realized they weren't going anywhere. They stayed glued to that table like they'd reserved it for the whole night. Every time I tried to talk to her, one of them interrupted. And it wasn't even like they were being rude. It was worse, they were just ignoring the fact that this was supposed to be a date. I barely said 10 words to her the whole time. She didn't seem to care. She was too busy filming her food and throwing filters on everything for her story. At one point, she held up her phone and tried to get me in a boomerang with her drink. I literally turned away and looked at the wall. Then came the bill. And I swear to you, I felt this icy wave of dread roll over me. Not because I couldn't pay, but because the second that leather folder hit the table, everyone just stopped. The volume dipped, the giggles paused, and they all looked at me. Like it was some kind of unspoken ritual. I sat there frozen for a second. Then she nudged the check toward me with the edge of her nail and said something like, "You're the gentleman, right?" It wasn't even a question, more like a line she used before. I blinked, looked down at the total, nearly 280 quid. For food I didn't eat, for drinks I didn't order, for people I'd never met in my life. I didn't say anything. I just stood up, pulled my wallet out, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked straight out. Behind me, I heard a loud "seriously," followed by a burst of fake laughter. Someone muttered something about wasting her lashes. I didn't turn around. I got back to my car, locked the doors, and just sat there staring at the steering wheel. My hands were shaky, and my mouth was dry again. I didn't even feel angry, just tired, like I'd been used without even being interesting enough for them to pretend I wasn't. Later that night, she texted me. 3 messages. One said, "Wow." Next said, "So broke boys can't even handle girls with friends now." And the last one, "You could have at least covered my plate. That's what real men do." I blocked her, deleted the app, slept with my phone on airplane mode. Since then, whenever someone says group dinner, I just laugh. Hard.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
It started out like one of those nights you kind of wish would come around more often. No pressure, no awkwardness, just a decent guy and good food. I wasn't even going to say yes to him at first because honestly, most of my matches don't make it past hey. But this one. He actually asked me questions, remembered small things I told him, and didn't try to be weird or overly flirty. It felt normal, chill. That alone was rare enough to say yes. We agreed to meet at a Greek place I'd been wanting to try for months. It wasn't too fancy, but nice enough that you could tell someone tried. I got there 10 minutes early just to avoid that weird shuffle of who gets there first. He was already sitting at the bar, scrolling through his phone. He smiled when he saw me and stood up to greet me. Polite, clean shoes, smelled nice. Off to a good start. Dinner went surprisingly well. He didn't talk over me. He wasn't one of those guys who tried to sound overly smart just to impress. He asked me about work, told me a bit about his dog, said he liked to cook but couldn't bake to save his life. It was the kind of conversation where nothing groundbreaking happened, but I didn't want to leave early either. There was a comfort to it. Not sparks, but maybe warm flickers. We shared a dessert, split the bill, and headed outside together. It had rained earlier, so the street had that wet concrete smell mixed with car exhaust. I called my Uber. He waited with me near the curb. It took like 4 minutes to arrive, but even then, he didn't try anything weird. No sudden moves, no reaching in for a kiss I didn't ask for. Just stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, looking like he wanted to say something but didn't. I said bye, got into the car, and that should have been it. Should have. About 10 minutes into the ride, my phone vibrated. I looked down expecting a text, but it was this weird little notification I'd never seen before. AirTag found moving with you. I stared at it for a second, thinking maybe I'd accidentally picked up one from the restaurant or something. Maybe someone dropped theirs and it landed in my purse by mistake. I clicked on the alert, and it showed this little map of my route, the line starting way back from the restaurant and following the exact route my Uber had taken so far. That's when my heart started beating fast, like really fast. My hand suddenly felt too big and too cold at the same time. I opened my purse slowly and started digging through it without making it obvious to the driver. Keys, lip balm, tissues, compact, receipts. Then, tucked into the tiny side pocket where I usually keep emergency gum, I found a tiny white AirTag. No case, no carrying, just loose. I didn't even touch it at first, just stared at it like it might blink or explode. My brain immediately started rewinding the night, trying to remember every moment he might have been close enough to slip it in. And the worst part, there were lots of chances. He helped me with my coat when I sat down, handed me my purse when I came back from the bathroom, picked it up off the floor when it fell off my chair. Any of those moments he could have done it. I suddenly felt like I was being watched, even though I knew I wasn't. I looked out the back window of the Uber just to be sure, like I was gonna spot him tailing me in a black car or something. Nothing. I texted my friend right away. Just said, "Call me when you can, something weird happened." Then I screenshot the notification and sent it to her. She called instantly, probably thinking I was being dramatic like usual. But when I explained, her voice went flat. Told me to turn off Bluetooth and location sharing. Told me to go to a public place, not straight home. She was already Googling what to do. Meanwhile, I sat there trying not to cry in the back of this Uber while the driver hummed along to some chill jazz playlist like everything was fine. I asked him to drop me off at a petrol station a few blocks from my house. bought a bottle of water I didn't want, and stood near the snacks until I figured out what to do. My friend pulled up 20 minutes later and I got into her car, still holding the AirTag in a crumpled napkin. We drove around for a bit while she tried to help me reset my phone settings and report the tag through Apple. Apparently, there's a way to make it beep so you can find it, but mine wasn't beeping. It was just there, quiet and creepy. Eventually, we threw it in a random skip down an alley near the train station. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want him tracking it again. And honestly, I didn't want to go to the police and be brushed off like I was overreacting. I blocked his number that night, deleted the app, even went through my purse again in case there was something else. There wasn't. He never messaged me again, never reached out, never showed up. But sometimes I still wonder if he knew I found it, or if he kept watching the little dot on his phone until it just stopped. Either way, I double-check my purse now, every single time. I don't usually go out on weekdays, but for some reason I said yes to this one. Maybe because she messaged first. Maybe because she had a weird profile bio that said, "Only serious men. Don't waste my time." I had questions. At the time, I figured she was just trying to weed out flakes. I didn't think she meant it literally. We agreed to meet at this tiny Mexican spot downtown. It was a Tuesday, so the place was mostly empty except for a couple of guys at the bar and a group of office people doing loud tequila shots for some guy's promotion. She was already seated when I arrived, which threw me off a little. Most dates don't sit down before saying hi, right? But she waved me over like we were old friends or coworkers. No hug, no smile. Just a quick nod and a "you're 2 minutes late." I laughed it off and sat down. She didn't laugh back. She was pretty, I'll give her that. Not the overly filtered type either. Natural, sharp eyes, wore all black with clean nails. Something about her was intense though. Not loud, but still kind of heavy. I remember thinking, this girl's either gonna be amazing or completely insane. I ordered a soda, she had a glass of water with lemon, and right after the waitress left, she looked me dead in the face and said, "Okay, I just want to ask a few things up front before we waste each other's time." I blinked, smiled awkwardly. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She pulled a folded piece of paper out of her coat pocket and opened it on the table like a student prepping for a pop quiz. It had bullet points. Real ones, like full-on categories. I saw sections labeled work, family, habits, and one just titled past. She started with simple stuff, where I worked, how long I'd been there, whether I liked it. Then she moved on to weirder ones. Do I floss daily or every few days? Do I believe in reincarnation? Do I sleep with socks on or off? Have I ever lied about owning a cat? I tried to joke through most of it, thinking maybe this was just her version of breaking the ice, but the way she scribbled notes on the paper after each of my answers, it made me feel like I was being interviewed for a job I didn't apply for. Some of the questions got way too personal. Stuff like how many people I've lived with, if I've ever cheated on anyone, if I've ever broken someone's phone during an argument. She leaned in every time I answered, squinting like she was trying to catch me lying. Then she asked me something that made my brain stumble. "What's your sister's name again?" I hadn't mentioned having a sister. Not in our chats. Not at the table. I kind of stared at her for a second, thinking maybe I misheard. But she was already staring at me like I was supposed to confess something. I told her I didn't have a sister. She nodded slowly and wrote something down. The next question, ever been to Brighton in 2021? That time I paused. I had. Just once. For a weekend trip with an old uni mate. I told her that, trying to sound casual. She froze for a beat, like I just triggered something. She asked what hotel I stayed at. I couldn't remember the name. I just said it was near the beach and had terrible pillows. She tapped her pen twice against the paper, then looked up and said the exact name of the hotel. I felt my stomach drop a little. Then she said it. Just dropped it like she was asking for the bill. "I think you're my ex, the one who cheated on me and changed his name after." I laughed. I didn't know what else to do. I genuinely thought she was messing with me. But she wasn't smiling. She said her ex had ghosted her after 2 years, changed his number, deleted everything, and disappeared. She'd been trying to track him down ever since, and the second she saw my profile, she just knew. She said my ears looked too similar. My eyes looked guilty. My smile made her feel sick. She spent weeks comparing my pictures to old ones of him and finally matched up a mole on the side of my neck. I don't even have a mole on my neck. I told her that. Pulled my collar aside to prove it. She leaned across the table, squinting, trying to find one like it was gonna magically appear. Then she just sat back and shook her head, said I must have had it removed. I wanted to leave so badly, but I didn't know how to get up without making things worse. She started going on about the trip to Brighton, saying I had been there with that girl from your work, that she had photos but wasn't going to show me because she didn't need to prove anything. I told her again calmly that it wasn't him, that she had the wrong guy, that I'd never lived in the city she was talking about, and I'd never even dated someone named whatever her name was. She didn't budge. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started scrolling through old photos, trying to find one of him. I didn't want to look, but she pushed it across the table like she was showing me evidence in a court case. The photo showed a guy with darker hair, rounder face, definitely not me. I pointed that out. She said I'd gained weight and probably dyed my hair. At that point, I just stood up and told her I had to go. She didn't stop me, but she watched me walk out like she was taking mental notes on my posture or something. I deleted the app that night. Didn't sleep. I kept checking my socials to make sure she hadn't found my Instagram or LinkedIn or anything. I even started second-guessing if I had ever met her somewhere. Some weird part of my brain started questioning stuff I knew was never real. But no, I wasn't her ex. Just some unlucky guy who looked a little too familiar. You ever have one of those dates where everything's technically fine, but you still can't shake the weird vibe? That's how this one started. He was actually kind of cute in a quiet way, not super flashy, just normal. Wore clean trainers, decent haircut, smelled like laundry detergent, not cologne. I met him through the app everyone hates but keeps re-downloading. He messaged first. His chats weren't cringy, didn't drop any weird pickup lines. We talked about random stuff, favorite crisps, worst movies, how he once tripped over a pigeon. He made me laugh, which is rare enough to get me out of the house. We met at this pasta place not far from the station. Pretty chill spot. Dim lights, kind of rustic fake vines hanging from the ceiling. He was already there when I arrived, standing by the entrance like he was trying not to look nervous. That should have been my first clue. He was a bit too on edge. Kept tapping his fingers on the table or checking the mirror behind me like he was watching something. Still, I brushed it off. He was probably just shy, or maybe awkward around girls. Whatever. Dinner was fine. Not incredible. Not terrible. He talked a lot about how he hated working in an office and how he was trying to build his own furniture business. Said he made tables and chairs in his garage. I pretended to be impressed. I mean, cool hobby, I guessed. He showed me a photo of a chair he made out of a reclaimed door, which just looked uncomfortable, but I said it was nice. He smiled like it meant the world. After we paid, he walked me out and then suddenly said, real casual, you should come see it sometime. I thought he meant the chair until he added, it's just up the road. Only takes 5 minutes. Then he started walking like I already agreed. I hesitated, I really did. But I looked around, people everywhere, pubs still open, buses running, and told myself I could handle 5 minutes. Worst case, I'd pretend I had a train to catch. So I followed. His place was in a terrace row, the kind where all the houses looked the same except someone's added fairy lights or a bad paint job. His one had no number on the door, which made me pause, but I didn't say anything. He unlocked it quickly like he'd done it 1,000 times in the dark. Inside, the hallway smelled like paint and something musty like wet wood. There were no photos on the walls, no coat rack, just bare walls and a shoe rack with 3 identical pairs of trainers. He motioned for me to follow him into the front room, which was dimly lit by this tiny lamp that barely reached the corners of the room. The floor was all mismatched rugs. There was one couch, a scratched-up coffee table, and a weird old TV that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Then I saw them. Handcuffs, sitting dead center on the coffee table. Real ones. Not novelty pink ones or furry ones, like police issue, just lying there like decoration. I laughed awkwardly, hoping maybe it was a joke, but he didn't even react. Just sat down like everything was normal and asked if I wanted a drink. I said no, my throat felt dry. I stayed standing. My eyes kept going back to the cuffs. He started talking again, Something about how people don't understand the value of discipline and structure, and I stopped listening. I suddenly realized how quiet the house was. Too quiet. No fridge hum. No outside noise. Nothing. I told him I was tired and probably should get going. That's when he said, "Let me at least show you the chair, it's upstairs." Again, I hesitated, but I figured upstairs might be safer than staying in the weird living room with those cuffs staring at me, so I followed. The stairs creaked with every step. At the top was a short hallway with 3 doors. One was open, probably the bathroom. The other 2 were shut. He opened the one on the right and gestured for me to go in. I did. The chair was there in the corner. Same one from the photo. Big, heavy, rough edges. It looked more like something you'd use to block a door than actually sit on. But what caught my eye wasn't the chair. It was the lock. On the outside of the door. Not like a deadbolt or a latch. An actual padlock hook screwed into the frame, with the second part drilled into the door. It wasn't locked, but it could have been. My stomach dropped. I stepped back out into the hallway and pretended to admire the chair from the doorway. That's when I saw it. The other door. Same lock. Same setup. 2 bedrooms, both with locks on the outside. He said something behind me, but I didn't hear it. I was already moving. I smiled that I really had to go now. Thanked him for showing me the chair. He followed me downstairs slowly, asking if I was sure if I wanted a coffee, if I could just wait a bit before heading out. I kept repeating, "No thanks, I've got work early, I'll text you." He stood by the door and didn't open it at first. Just looked at me like he was trying to decide something. I felt my hands start to shake. I kept my face calm, but I was ready to scream if he moved toward me. Then finally, he unlocked the door. I stepped out and walked fast, not turning around. When I got to the end of the road, I ran. Got into a cab, didn't say a word the whole ride home. Blocked his number that night. A few days later, I checked the app. His profile was gone. Just disappeared. Sometimes I wonder how many girls followed him up those stairs and didn't look at the locks. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. I didn't go into the night thinking I'd meet someone. Honestly, I only agreed to the date because I was bored and hadn't had real human interaction outside of work in like 2 weeks. She messaged first, had a profile with decent pics, said she was into film photography and black coffee. I figured she was just another artsy type, maybe a bit quirky. I was okay with that. We met at a wine bar she picked. Dim lights, weird jazz playing, shelves lined with bottles I couldn't pronounce. She showed up wearing this huge brown coat that made her look like she'd just come back from some cabin in the woods. Her eyes were light gray, almost silver, and she didn't blink much. I noticed that almost immediately, but she smiled when she talked, and she had this low voice that made everything she said sound dramatic. She didn't ask the usual stuff. No, what do you do, or have you been on many dates lately? She asked me if I ever felt like I was being watched in public, if I had dreams that repeated, if I believed that everyone has a version of themselves they don't even know about, that kind of thing. I played along. I thought she was just deep or trying to be. The night actually went pretty smooth, even if it was a little strange. No awkward silences. We laughed a few times. She told me she hated people who interrupted and loved people who listened. I made sure I didn't interrupt once. When it got close to midnight, she asked if I wanted to come see her place. Said she had a record player and a bottle of red she wanted to finish. She made it sound casual. Chill. I wasn't expecting anything wild, just figured we'd hang for a bit. Talk some more, and then I'd bounce. Her place was only a 10-minute walk. She lived in this old building tucked behind a row of charity shops and a closed-down laundromat. There was no buzzer. She had to unlock the door manually with one of those giant old keys, the kind you'd see in a cartoon jail. The hallway was dead silent and smelled like dried flowers and wood polish. Her flat was on the second floor. She opened the door slowly, like she wanted to make an entrance. At first, it looked normal, cozy even. Candles burning on the windowsill, a cat curled up on a chair, soft music playing from the corner. The lights were warm and low, and the place smelled like cinnamon and paint. Then I looked up. The walls. Her entire living room, every single wall, was covered in framed photos. Not paintings, not random decor, just portraits, all of men. Every single frame had a guy in it. Different expressions, different poses. Some of the photos were candid, like they'd been caught mid-laugh or looking away. Others looked like school portraits, straight on, stiff, expressionless. Some were in black and white. Some had scratches on the glass. One had tape holding it together. They filled the room like wallpaper, every inch, edge to edge. I tried not to react. I thought maybe they were family. Brothers, cousins, old classmates. I was halfway through asking when she said it herself. All past dates. Just like that. I froze. She walked over to one of the frames near the bookshelf, pointed at a guy with long hair and a nose ring, and told me they only went on one date, but he liked Turkish coffee and used to tap his foot when he got anxious. Then she pointed to another guy, a bald dude in a leather jacket, and said he came back to her place once and cried when she played a certain song. She said it like she was showing me a photo album, not a gallery of men she barely knew. I asked quietly how many photos there were. She said she'd stopped counting after 37. I was still standing near the door, just nodding and pretending to find it all cool or artsy or whatever, but my stomach was flipping. The weirdest part, none of the men were smiling. Not one. They all looked either serious or confused or slightly off, like they didn't know the photo was being taken, like they didn't want to be in it. She offered me wine. I said yes just to have something to hold. She poured it slowly without looking down and handed me the glass with both hands. I sat on the edge of her couch, trying not to stare at the walls, but it was impossible. They were everywhere. I spotted a guy that looked vaguely familiar, maybe from an ad or something, but couldn't tell if I was imagining it. The guy right above the record player had red eyes, not glowing or anything, just bloodshot. He looked terrified. She sat down beside me, crossed her legs, and started asking me questions. Weird ones. What's your blood type? Have you ever been photographed in your sleep? Do you keep spare keys outside your flat? I didn't answer most of them. I just sipped the wine and gave her polite little nods. I felt if I moved too fast or said the wrong thing, something would snap. She kept looking at my face like she was studying it, like she was mentally measuring how it would look in a frame. I pretended to yawn and said I had to work early. She didn't argue. Just stood up and walked me to the door without saying anything. No hug. No had a good time. Nothing. I walked down those stairs like my shoes were made of glass. The next morning, she sent me a photo of me from the night before. Same clothes, same wine glass in hand, same lighting as her living room. Except I didn't remember her taking it. I blocked her instantly. I still think about that wall sometimes. Wonder if I'm framed and hanging there now. Probably. I should have just met him at the restaurant. He asked if I could come to his place first, said it was easier that way since the spot was only 5 minutes from his house. He said we could ride together, grab a coffee from his kitchen, maybe chill a bit before heading out. At the time, it didn't sound like a big deal. We'd been talking for a couple weeks, voice notes, a few video calls, nothing weird. He seemed normal enough. Clean haircut, good teeth, liked animals, safe. The address he gave me was in one of those older housing estates on the edge of town, where all the houses look kind of the same. I pulled up and triple-checked the number, then texted in that I was outside. He replied instantly, "Come in, doors open." I hesitated. I was already regretting not being somewhere public, but I told myself I was just being dramatic, so I went in. The hallway smelled like food and cigarettes. There were shoes everywhere, like a pile of them, not lined up neatly. A football was wedged behind the radiator. Some kid's backpack was half-zipped and leaking papers across the floor. Definitely not a bachelor pad. He came jogging down the stairs in socks and a wrinkled hoodie. Smiled wide, said something about sorry, house is a bit hectic today. I kind of laughed and asked if his roommates had kids or something. That's when he said it. "Nah, I live with my fam for now." He said it so casually I thought he meant just his mom or something. I was already inside, shoes off, purse in hand. I wasn't gonna bail over that. He led me into the kitchen. There was a woman washing dishes who looked vaguely like him, his mom, I assumed, and a teenage boy on the floor watching something on a tablet. There were pots everywhere, foil covering trays, like they just finished cooking a feast or were about to start one. The room felt hot, and something on the stove was burning a little. Then I heard this loud, hoarse voice coming from the living room. At first, I thought it was the TV. No. His Uncle King stumbling in with a half-emptied beer bottle and a face that looked like it hadn't smiled in a decade. His shirt was open halfway, revealing a sweaty tank top underneath, and he had this red flush on his cheeks like he'd been yelling for hours. He stopped when he saw me, dead quiet. Then he whistled. Full-on, drag-out whistle, like I was a dog that just fetched something. Everyone else kind of froze. My date laughed it off, awkwardly, like, haha, ignoring him, he's just messing. But the uncle kept talking. First, it was comments about my clothes. Said they looked tight enough to peel off. Then it turned into stuff about my body. I won't repeat it. Just know it was gross. The kind of stuff that makes your stomach feel like it's flipping over itself. I looked at my date, expecting him to say something. He didn't. Not really. He gave this half-hearted, all right, calm down, and tried to laugh again. The mom didn't say anything either. She just kept drying dishes like she didn't hear a word. I said, wait outside. He followed me to the porch, kept apologizing, saying his uncle gets like that sometimes, and that he was supposed to be in the shed drinking alone but came in for a smoke. I told him I was going to call a cab. He panicked, offered to just leave for dinner right now, said we didn't have to stay long. I should have just walked away. But he looked embarrassed, like really embarrassed, so I gave him one more chance. Stupid, I know. We got in his car and pulled out of the drive. I remember him fumbling with the aux cord, trying to play something chill. I kept glancing back at the house like I expected the uncle to come running out after us. 5 minutes into the drive, he said we had to stop at the shop. Said his mom asked him to grab bread and milk real quick. He pulled into this tiny corner shop and told me I could wait in the car. He left the engine running. I sat there, arms crossed, watching the sky darken a little. I was just about to text my friend when I saw movement in the rearview mirror. His uncle, walking toward the car. I locked the doors so fast I almost cracked the button. He walked right up to the passenger window and knocked, then knocked again harder. He was still holding the same beer. His eyes were glassy. His smile was wrong. I didn't roll it down, just stared straight ahead and pretended not to see him. He shouted something, probably my name, then something else I didn't catch. I refused to look. My date came running out a second later with a plastic bag and an expression like he'd just seen a ghost. He opened the driver's side and started yelling at his uncle through the glass. They argued for a few seconds before the uncle flipped us off and stumbled back down the road, still shouting. We didn't go to dinner. He drove me back to my car in silence, then said this never happens, I swear. I didn't say anything. Just got out, locked my door, and left. He texted me that night. Something about how he understands if I'm not into it anymore, but that I caught them on a bad day. I didn't reply. Blocked him. That house still makes me feel weird whenever I drive past it. I'll always check for that same uncle on the porch, beer in hand, eyes too steady for someone that drunk. I don't stop anymore. I just keep driving. "5 minutes into the drive, he said we had to stop at the shop. Said his mom asked him to grab bread and milk real quick. He pulled into this tiny corner shop and told me I could wait in the car. I got to the cafe early. Not because I was excited or anything. I just didn't want to be the one showing up second. It was one of the small places that tries to look homemade, handwritten chalkboards, hanging plants in mugs, stuff like that. Quiet, not too crowded, felt like a safe spot for a first date. We met on Hinge. Her name was Dana. She had this chill energy in the messages, kind of sarcastic, bit of a dry sense of humor, which I liked. Her photos were all taken outdoors, always in big jackets and scarves, like she lived permanently in autumn. Cute smile, nothing over the top. Just seemed like someone who was grounded, you know. She was 10 minutes late, which was fine. I figured traffic, maybe makeup, whatever. But when she finally showed up, I did a full double take. She had a kid with her. Like a full-on toddler, maybe 2. Dressed in a puffy yellow coat, dragging a plastic dinosaur by the tail. He looked exhausted and sticky, and kept dropping his juice pouch. She walked in like nothing was weird. Smiled, said how like this was totally normal, then lifted the kid up into a chair next to her and buckled him, and using one of those little strap things she pulled from her purse like she was prepping for a long-haul flight. I was frozen, like I hadn't downloaded the update for this level of surprise. She caught my face and laughed, but not like a nervous laugh. It was more of a you'll get used to it kind of laugh. Then she dropped the line. I don't believe in babysitters. Just like that, like it was a political stance. Like I'd asked her about her thoughts on fluoride in the water. I didn't know what to say. I genuinely thought she might be joking at first. Or maybe she had a last-minute emergency and had no choice. But when I asked, casually politely, if this was a one-off thing, she said, "No, this is just how I date. He comes with me. He's part of the package." Now listen, I'm not one of those people who panics over kids. I've got cousins, nieces, whatever. But showing up to a first date with a toddler until it gets a therapy dog. No warning. Not even by the way. It was insane. I smiled like an idiot and told myself to just roll with it. One drink. That's all. We hadn't even ordered yet. She waved the waitress over and asked if they had apple slices for kids. The waitress looked confused. Dana repeated it louder, like she was at a drive-thru. The kid was now banging his little plastic dinosaur against the table and making some kind of humming noise that got louder every time she tried to talk. And every time I tried to answer one of her questions, basic stuff like where I work or what I do on weekends, she'd interrupt and say hi, Leo. Say hi to my friend." He never did. He just stared at me with these wide, glassy eyes like he was sizing me up, like he knew something I didn't. Halfway through the drink, she asked me if I was the patient type. I didn't know what she meant. She followed it up with, "Because if we work out, you're gonna have to be." Again, totally serious. Then she asked me if I wanted kids within the next year or two. Not if I ever wanted them, just straight up, was I ready by next spring? I laughed. I shouldn't have. That made her expression change for the first time all night. She looked annoyed, like I'd said something rude. Meanwhile, the kid had started throwing pieces of paper straw wrapper on the floor and yelling "trash" after each one. No one stopped him. She didn't even flinch, just kept talking. Told me how she used to do modeling before she got serious about being a full-time mom. Then started telling me about her plan to move to Portugal and how she was hoping to bring a man with her by next year. All while her son was wiping his hands on the cushion next to me and whispering nonsense like he was casting a spell. I tried to wrap things up, politely. Said I had a thing early the next morning, which wasn't a lie. She looked disappointed and said she thought we had a natural connection. Then she said this thing that made my entire spine lock up. "Leo really likes you, and he doesn't usually like men." Sorry. The kid hadn't said a single word to me. He'd just thrown things, wiped apple goo on the table, and stared at me like I owed him money. I left cash on the table and told her to enjoy the rest of the evening. She didn't stand up. Just said, "Don't take too long to text back. We don't have time to waste." We. I got outside and took the deepest breath of my life. It was like I just escaped a trap I didn't know I walked into. She texted me an hour later. "Leo's asking where you went. He got sad." Then, "You're either all in or you're not ready for real love." I blocked her. But for like 2 weeks, I kept checking over my shoulder every time I walked into a coffee shop, half expecting her, that sticky dinosaur kid, to be sitting there, just waiting. I wasn't even that into him at first. He was decent looking, sure, clean skin, normal teeth, tall enough, but nothing that made me go wow. But he had this confident way of texting, like he always knew what to say to keep the convo going without being annoying. He made me laugh a few times, asked about my music taste, said he liked girls who can cook, but also girls who aren't afraid to try weird stuff, whatever that meant. After a few days of chatting, he suggested a date, but not the usual coffee or bar thing. He said we should have a fun cooking night at his place. Said he had a great kitchen, a spice drawer you'd cry over, and a full wine rack. It sounded like a flex, but a charming one. Honestly, I thought it was kind of cute that he wanted to cook instead of just meeting at some crowded restaurant and pretending to be into the menu. I agreed. He sent over his address. It was in one of those shiny new build blocks on the nicer side of town. Not exactly where I thought he lived, but I figured maybe I misjudged him. Maybe the dude really was doing well. I got there around 7 p.m. The outside of the building looked like it belonged in a brochure. Smooth gray panels, tall glass lobby, little garden lights lining the path. The elevator even had that soft jazz playing in the background. I texted him when I was outside the door, and he opened it right away, smiling like he'd been waiting all day. The place was spotless, like eerily spotless. The second I walked in, I noticed the smell first. Not food, not cologne. Just that expensive, no one lives here smell. You know when you walk into a stage apartment or one of those Airbnb listings that's been cleaned too well. That smell. Everything looked showroom new. The couch had perfect pillows lined up like they'd never been touched. Not a single picture frame on the wall, not a mug in the sink, not a hoodie tossed anywhere. It felt cold. He said something about taking off my shoes and offered me a glass of red wine. I asked what we were making, and he pulled out a recipe book like it was a special occasion. Flipped to a page with a risotto recipe and said it was his go-to. I smiled and followed him to the kitchen. That's when things started feeling off. For a guy who bragged about having top-shelf kitchen stuff, the cupboards were practically empty. I opened one looking for salt, and there were like 3 jars. A bottle of sriracha, stale crackers, and one of those giant tubs of protein powder. He saw me staring and said his pantry game was weak this week. I let it slide. Then he pulled out a chopping board from the drawer, still in plastic, like brand new, never opened. I was like, huh. He fumbled through a drawer looking for knives and pulled out a mismatched set wrapped in paper towel. Not a knife block, not something you'd expect from someone who hosts cooking nights all the time. He couldn't even find a peeler. Used a spoon to scrape the skin off a carrot. No lie. I glanced toward the hallway and saw a closed door. It had a weird little sign on it. I squinted. It said Liam's room, do not enter. I asked him casually who Liam was. He paused for half a second. Too long, then said, oh, just my cousin. He's staying here for a while. Except now that I knew to look for it, stuff started making sense. The keys hanging by the door had a keyring with the letter L. The shoes in the hallway, size 10, Adidas, all the same style. The jacket on the hook was way too big for the guy I was on a date with. He saw me staring again and tried to distract me. Told me to watch the rice while he stepped into the hallway to grab something real quick. I stood there in that perfect, sterile kitchen, feeling like I'd walked into someone else's life. While he was gone, I peeked into the fridge. Only drinks, like just drinks. Beers, energy drinks, and a lonely half-used oat milk. No veggies, no eggs, nothing to actually cook with. Not even butter. It hit me hard. This wasn't his place. He came back in with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses like he was trying to reset the mood. I didn't say anything yet. I just nodded and took a sip. But I was already planning my exit. We sat on the couch while the rice overcooked. He asked me more questions about music, about my family, if I believed in fate. I barely answered. I was too distracted by the complete lack of personal items in the flat. No mail on the counter. No toothbrush in the bathroom. I checked. Eventually, I asked him flat out, is this really your place? He smiled too quickly. Said, yeah, why? I just raised an eyebrow and stared. His smile cracked. Then he kind of slumped and admitted it. It was his friend's flat. His friend Liam. He borrowed it for the night. He said he wanted to impress me. That his real place was a bit messy and under construction. Said I wouldn't have said yes if I saw it. I didn't say much after that. I told him I wasn't feeling well and call a ride. He tried to walk me out, offered to pack the risotto for later. I declined. The next day, he texted me saying, hey, I get that last night was awkward, but can I take you out for real this time? I'd never replied. I kept thinking about Liam, wondering if he knew some random girl had been dragged into his kitchen, eating off his plates, walking through his hallway, being lied to like it was nothing. I blocked him later that night. Never went on another cooking day again. You ever have one of those moments where you know, deep down, you should just walk away, but your body betrays you? Like you're planted there, waiting for a train that's already off the rails, convinced maybe, just maybe, it'll straighten itself out before it hits the station. Yeah, that was this date. We matched on Bumble. Her name was Rena. Pretty in a serious way. Sharp eyes, clean makeup, strong jawline. The kind of face that looked like it belonged in a corporate headshot. She gave off that I don't have time for games energy. Which cool. I wasn't looking to mess around either. Her bio said she liked ambition, confidence, and men who plan ahead. Didn't think much of it. Most bios are recycled Pinterest quotes anyway. We messaged for a few days. She was sharp, quick to reply, and had this no-nonsense tone in her text that I actually found refreshing. Asked what I did, told me she liked independent guys, said she hated people who wasted time. Fair enough. I figured, alright, dinner might be fun. She picked a restaurant, some upscale fusion place with low lighting, candles, and dishes that sounded like science experiments. Whatever. I was just happy to get out of the house and maybe talk to someone who didn't respond to everything with lol. She showed up 10 minutes late. No apology. Just glided in, all sleek hair and tailored jacket, and immediately told the waiter we needed a table with better lighting. That should have been the first clue, right? But I brushed it off. Maybe she wanted nice photos of the food or something. I tried breaking the ice, complimented her earrings, asked if they were new. She didn't even look up from the menu. Didn't say thanks. Just said something about how she usually doesn't date down. I froze. Thought maybe I misheard. Laughed it off, tried to keep the vibe light. She didn't ask how my day was. Didn't ask about hobbies or family or even why I'd chosen it. She asked how much I made. Not what I did. I'd already told her that. She wanted a number, a salary, like we were filling out a loan application. I laughed awkwardly and said something like, enough to take myself out to places like this, hoping that would dodge the landmine. It didn't. She looked at me like I'd just refused to answer a court summons. Said she needed to know because she didn't like wasting her time. Then came the car questions. What do I drive? Is it financed or owned? Do I wash it myself or pay someone? I swear to God, she even asked what brand of tires I had. When I said I didn't know, she sighed and shook her head like I'd just confessed to living under a bridge. I tried to redirect, movies, travel, favorite food, anything. But she wasn't biting. She wanted numbers. Mortgage or rent? If I own, how many bedrooms? How far from central London? Do I plan to upgrade soon? By the time the starters came, I felt less like a date and more like I was sitting in front of a hiring panel for a job I didn't want. I tried flipping one question back at her, just to balance it out. Asked her what she was working toward. She laughed, actually laughed. Then she leaned forward, eyes locked on me, and said her future depended on who she ended up with. That she was vetting me. That word made my skin crawl. Vetting, like I was livestock at auction. We were halfway through the mains when she leaned back, crossed her arms, and announced, loud enough for the couple at the next table to hear, this is a waste of time. Not dramatic, not angry, just flat. Cold, like she was reading out the weather forecast. I blinked, fork halfway to my mouth. I'd ordered chicken satay. I remember because it suddenly tasted like cardboard. She wasn't done. She said I had no ambition, that my lifestyle was barely middle tier, and that I gave off man who settled energy. The way she said it, polished, rehearsed, it was like she'd been practicing the lines in the mirror all week. I finally found my voice and asked her why she even came then. Why swipe right? Why bother messaging? She shrugged and said she thought maybe my photos didn't do me justice, that she was giving me a shot out of curiosity. Like I was a stray mutt she decided to check out before leaving the shelter. That was it for me. I stood up. Didn't finish the meal. Didn't even wait for the bill. I just pulled out some cash, more than enough to cover everything, and said, good luck finding your millionaire CEO with Michelin tires and 6 investment properties. As I walked out, I heard her ask the waiter if she could get her meal packed to go. She took mine too. No joke. Later that night, I got a text from her. Hope you learned something. Raise your standards. I blocked her. But here's the thing, the worst part wasn't the date. It wasn't the interrogation, the cold dismissal, or even her walking out with 2 bags of food I'd paid for. The worst part was the day after, when I actually thought about what she said. Thought maybe she had a point. Maybe I was behind. Maybe I should have been earning more, driving better, living larger. It messed with my head. For about 24 hours, I was spiraling. But then it hit me, it wasn't about ambition or money or cars. It was about her. About how she talked to people. How she made them feel small so she could feel bigger. How she treated human beings like stock options, running through risk assessments instead of conversations. I still see her pop up on apps sometimes. Same photos, same bio, still vetting. I swipe left every time. And every time I do, I feel this quiet relief, like dodging a bullet. Because some trains aren't just off the rails, they're headed straight for a cliff. It was one of those evenings where you just want to get it over with. You know the ones. You're already in a bad mood before the day even starts. Your makeup's not sitting right, and your gut keeps trying to tell you something, but you mute it with lip gloss and Spotify. He picked the place. A quiet little diner on the edge of town that I'd never heard of, but I figured maybe he was going for quirky local charm. It wasn't terrible. A bit empty, weird lighting, but the food was okay and he wasn't a total weirdo. A bit too proud of his Spotify playlist, but whatever. He was nice. Too nice. The kind of nice that feels like it's been practiced. He held every door open like he was doing it for a crowd. Laughed a little too hard at his own jokes. Kept saying stuff like, I always respect women, which, like, cool. That's the floor, not a gold star. Still, the conversation wasn't awful. He didn't ask anything creepy. He didn't comment on my body. And he offered to pay without making a big deal about it. So when he asked if I needed a ride home, I hesitated, but then said sure. My flat was only 15 minutes away, and it was starting to drizzle. I didn't feel like waiting for an Uber in the dark. That was a mistake. We get in his car, a beat-up little hatchback that smelled like cheap cologne and air freshener fighting for dominance. There was a single glove in the cup holder and some coins stuck to the floor mats, but it was clean enough to not set off alarms. At first, it seemed fine. He asked me if I liked the food, said we should try something even better next time, and I just nodded along. I was already zoning out tired, ready to be in bed scrolling TikTok with a face mask on. But then we hit the first wrong turn. I noticed it immediately because I'm not clueless. There are only two main ways to get to my area from that diner, and he took neither. Instead, he turned right, down a road I knew led nowhere near my place. I waited, thinking maybe it was a shortcut I didn't know about, or maybe he was dropping something off. I gave him a minute. Then another wrong turn. Now we're heading out toward the industrial side of town. Empty streets, warehouse buildings, fewer and fewer lights. I asked him casually if he was taking the scenic route. I even laughed a little, tried to keep it light. He said something about not being ready for the night to end. Said it in this weird, calm voice. Not flirty, not playful, just flat. I laughed again, but it came out dry. Told him I had an early morning, that I had to get home. He nodded, and took another wrong turn. At this point, my heart's doing somersaults. I start checking my phone under my jacket, pretending to scroll while quietly opening my location. Signal's weak. Figures. I look out the window. We're driving past closed shops, construction sites, and rows of dark fences. I keep waiting for him to loop back around. He doesn't. I say my street name, loudly this time. He ignores it. Just keeps talking about something random. A movie he saw, I think. I stop listening. I'm fully alert now, tracking every corner, every sign. I realize we're about 2 minutes from an abandoned train yard that's always on the news for shady stuff. I don't panic. Not yet. I just start saying that I think I left something at the diner. My bag, maybe. I make it sound urgent. I fake check my pockets. He glances at me, confused, then just says, "Don't worry, I'll get it for you later." I say no, I need it now. I try to sound serious without sounding scared. He keeps driving. I start talking faster, telling him I really need to go back. I tell him I have my roommate waiting, that she tracks my location, that she's already texting me. She wasn't, but I needed him to think someone was. Then, finally, he pulls over. Not back at the diner, not anywhere near. Just on a side street behind a patrol station that's long since gone out of business. All the windows are boarded up. There's no one around. Just the sound of rain starting to tap harder on the roof. He turns to me slowly and says, "You don't have to lie." Now my blood runs cold. I don't respond. I just grab my bag and say I need to use the toilet. The second I open the car door, I book it. I run across the street in the parking lot of a dodgy little pub that looked half shut but still had lights on. I didn't look back. I pretended to be on the phone as I walked in, waved to the bartender like I was meeting someone, and went straight into the ladies' room. I locked the stall and sat on the toilet lid, heart punching through my chest. took a breath, then another. Finally, I checked my phone. 1 bar of signal, just enough to text my best friend. Just enough to send my location. I told her to call a cab for me. I waited in that pub bathroom for 20 minutes. Never saw this car again. Later that night, he messaged me. Just one word. Really. Blocked. That's all I could do. Still can't figure out what would have happened if I hadn't said anything. If I hadn't pretended to forget something. If I just kept quiet and trusted that eventually he'd get me home. I don't accept rides from dates anymore. Even if it's raining. It started off kind of perfect, which I guess should have been the warning sign. We matched a few days earlier. Her name was Lila. Dark curly hair, warm skin, really sharp jawline. Her photos had this old film vibe, and I figured she was just into artsy stuff. Her bio said she loved red wine, thunderstorms, and honest men. I liked that last part. Felt grounded. We chatted for a bit, nothing too deep, and she offered to cook me dinner. Said she'd just moved into her new flat, wanted an excuse to use her tiny kitchen. I hesitated, obviously. First date at her apartment. Most people do coffee or a drink, not homemade pesto pasta at a stranger's dining table. But she seemed normal. A bit forward, yeah, but not intense. And she sent me a voice note of her laughing at something I'd said, and I don't know, it made her feel real. So I said yes. She lived in a semi-detached house just off a quiet road near the park. When I got there, she buzzed me in and came down herself instead of making me figure out the gate. She was barefoot and wearing one of those oversized sweaters that looked like a blanket. Gave me a hug straight away and said she'd hope I liked mushrooms. The place was cozy. Not overly styled. Just some candles, a few plants, warm lights. Music playing softly in the background. It smelled like garlic and something sweet, maybe basil. She poured me a glass of wine before I even sat down. Said she liked to start the evening properly. I was already thinking, okay, this might be one of those rare, actually decent dates. We talked while she cooked. She told me she worked freelance, mostly photography and editing, and that she'd just gotten out of a long relationship. She said it casually, no drama, just that she was focusing on herself now, wanting to find someone who didn't waste her time. I joked that the bar was low these days. She smiled but didn't laugh. Just said, that's exactly why I do things my way now. Pasta was ready 20 minutes later. She made a whole set of candles lit, plates warm, actual napkins, not paper towels. We sat by the window, and the lights outside made the glass look foggy. It was weirdly quiet, like the whole building was asleep. She asked me a lot of questions during dinner, not in a nosy way, more like she was trying to build a map of who I was. What would I do if I found someone's phone on the bus? Have I ever cheated? How many times have I said, I love you, and actually meant it? I answered honestly. I figured she was just one of those people who likes to skip small talk. And to be fair, I wasn't uncomfortable, just curious where it was going. Then the front door opened. Like no knock, no warning, just the slow, casual click of a key turning in a lock. I froze mid-bite. Lila didn't even flinch, just calmly reached for her wine and sipped. A tall guy walked in wearing joggers and a fitted tee. Shaved head, broad shoulders, jaw clenched like he'd just finished screaming in the car. He walked straight into the kitchen, saw us, and stopped. Then his eyes locked on me. And Lila, still not looking at him, just said, that's my ex. Don't worry. But the guy didn't look like an ex. He didn't look like someone who had moved out. He looked like someone who lived there. His shoes were still by the door. His jacket was on the coat hook. There were 2 toothbrushes in the holder when I used the bathroom earlier. One was navy blue, still wet. He didn't speak, just stared at me, eyes twitching like he was waiting for me to explain my presence in his house. I stood up slowly, hands half raised, trying to play it cool, trying not to escalate. I said I was just leaving, that there must have been a mix-up. I looked at Lila for some kind of signal, anything. She just kept sipping her wine like she was watching a scene unfold exactly the way she planned. Then the guy snapped. Not violent, not yelling. But he looked right at her and said something that made my blood drop into my stomach. You really did it, huh? You actually went through with it. I backed up toward the hallway. Still no shouting. Just this thick silence like everything had slowed down. Lila stood up, walked over to him, and put her hand on his chest like she was calming down a dog. Then she looked at me and said, completely emotionless, I told him I prove how easy it is. He didn't believe me. I didn't get it at first. I couldn't compute what she was saying. She kept talking. Said I'd passed some points, but failed others. That she wanted to see how far I'd go. That her boyfriend, yes, boyfriend, thought she was too forgiving. So she came up with a test. Me. I asked her if she was serious. She said, yeah. That she only invites guys she thinks won't ruin the furniture. Her boyfriend laughed at that, like an actual chuckle. I left. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't wait to see if they'd stop me. Just walked out, handshaking as I ordered a ride. I stood in the rain for 10 minutes with the weirdest mix of shame and confusion pouring over me, like I'd been pranked and evaluated all at once. She messaged me later. Said, "No, take it personally. You were actually one of the better ones." Blocked. I still wonder what she was keeping score on, what she was looking for, or if it was just about watching people squirm. Either way, I was dinner and a social experiment. Never again. I wasn't even supposed to go on the date. That's what makes it worse. It wasn't one of those ones I've been looking forward to or had a good feeling about. He messaged me out of nowhere after 2 weeks of silence, said he finally had some free time and really wanted to meet. I had a gap between plans and figured whatever, dinner's dinner. Worst case, I get a story out of it. His profile was okay. Nothing amazing but decent photos, normal job listed, seemed older than the guys I usually go for, but in a settled kind of way. Our chat was mostly small talk. He was never flirty, never pushy, which honestly felt like a relief. He said he was big on honesty and done with games, and I thought great. So am I. He picked this little Turkish restaurant just outside the city. Not fancy, not sketchy. A safe middle ground. He got there first and was already seated at a booth when I walked in. Stood up when he saw me. He gave me this half smile like he didn't do this very often. He looked older in person. Not dramatically, but enough to make me do a mental rewind of his profile pics. Still, he seemed clean, polite, kind of soft-spoken. We sat, ordered drinks, and got into the usual opening lines. How was your day? Have you been here before? What do you usually do on weekends? Then came the weird part. Out of nowhere, while we were waiting for food, he says, so full honesty. I thought he was gonna tell me something awkward. Maybe he lived with his mom. Maybe he didn't have a job and just put one on the app. I braced myself for a lie. What I got was way worse than any of that. He leaned forward and said super casually, I just got out last week. I blinked, thought I misheard him. He clarified. Said he just finished a stretch. Used that exact word, stretch, then sipped his water like it was nothing. I asked him what he meant, and he looked me right in the eye and said it again. Prison. I got out last Thursday. My throat went dry. I just stared at him, trying to figure out if this was a joke. It wasn't. He wasn't smiling. I asked what for. Honestly, I don't even know why. Some part of me thought maybe it was a dumb mistake, like unpaid fines or something. No. He said, stalking my ex. Deadpan. I literally laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt like something you hear in a fake dating story, not an actual table in real life. He didn't laugh back. Just nodded like, yeah, I figured I should get that out early. Then he starts talking, like a full-on explanation I didn't ask for. Said he and his ex were together for a few years, then she changed, got secretive, started talking to other guys. He followed her one night, then again the next week, then again, said he needed clarity. Apparently, she filed a restraining order. He broke it. Multiple times. Got caught near her workplace. Once outside her flat. Said she was dramatic and twisting the story, but also admitted he got carried away. I was sitting across from a man who'd literally just been released for stalking someone, and I was on a date with him. The whole room felt smaller. The lights got brighter. I could hear every scrape of cutlery from the other tables. I didn't touch my food when it arrived. He kept going. Said he'd done the work, that therapy inside had helped him see things clearly, and that now he was only interested in women who could communicate. Said he appreciated how open I had been in our chats and how safe I seemed. Safe. That word made my spine tighten. I tried to play it cool. Didn't want to set him off. I smiled politely, nodded, kept glancing at my phone under the table, trying to think of a way to get out without making it obvious. I texted my friend one sentence. Call me now. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. I picked up and faked a shocked expression. Said something about a leak in my flat, that my flatmate was panicking, that I needed to get home. He looked disappointed but understanding. Said he'd pay the bill, told me I could make it up to him by going for drinks next week. I told him I'd message him. Grabbed my coat and left fast, heart hammering in my chest. As I waited for my cab, I could feel someone watching from inside the restaurant. I didn't look back. I just kept refreshing the app, praying for the car to come quicker. He texted me an hour later. Said, glad we're both honest people. Then, you're different from her. Then nothing else. I blocked him. I don't even think I told the full story to anyone for weeks. I was too creeped out. The way he said it all so calmly, like it was just part of his dating history, like he deserved a second chance because he served time. It haunted me. It still does sometimes. Every time I meet someone new, I think of him. How close I was. How easy it was for that to happen. How normal he seemed right until he didn't. She looked normal. That's what still bugs me. Like you always expect the weird ones to give something away early. Maybe their profile's too polished, or their texts have too many smiley faces, or they're obsessed with crystal energy or some conspiracy theory. But no, she looked chill. Pretty but not fake. Funny in the chats. Used words like vibes and low-key. Her Spotify was even decent. I was actually looking forward to it. She suggested a bar that wasn't too loud, which I appreciated, one of those spots with a bunch of hanging lights and overpriced craft beer. But at least you could hear yourself think. We agreed to meet around 7 p.m. for a quick drink, maybe dinner if things went well. I got there first. She arrived 10 minutes late, but whatever. She walked in looking all casual, hair tied up, black coat, big gold hoops. He gave me this big smile like we'd already met. She hugged me. Not a weird one, just confident. I liked that. First drink was solid. We talked about music, food, how much we both hated dating apps. She made fun of people who list CEO of my life in their bios, and I laughed because I'd just unmatched with someone like that earlier that week. She talked fast, but it wasn't overwhelming, just like her brain was moving quickly and I had to keep up. We were on our second drink when things shifted. She asked what I did for work. I told her, graphic design, mostly freelance, some agency stuff on the side. She nodded like she was super interested, leaned in a bit. Then she asked if I liked flexibility. I said, yeah, of course. She smiled wider, like too wide. She asked if I ever wanted to be my own boss. Said she could totally see me running my own thing. Said I had that look. I blinked. Didn't know what she meant by that look. I laughed and said something dumb like, what, tired and underpaid. She didn't laugh. She just said, no, driven. She dug into her tote bag. I thought maybe she was grabbing her phone or a tissue or something, but no, she pulled out a stack of shiny little booklets, like actual printed catalogs, plastic covers, tabs and everything. She slid one across the table toward me. I stared at it. There were pastel-colored bottles and happy women holding essential oils and fields. The title across the front said, Your Path to Freedom, Start Your Journey Today. I swear I thought it was a prank, like I half expected someone with a camera to jump out and tell me I was on a hidden show. She launched into a pitch, not a conversation. A pitch, like she'd rehearsed it. Started telling me about wellness, residual income, multiple revenue streams. I kept glancing around the bar, waiting for her to notice how weird this was, but she just kept going, flipping pages like she was showing me holiday photos. There were graphs. Testimonials. Some photo of a woman standing next to a Range Rover, holding a smoothie and smiling like she'd never worked a real job in her life. Then she said the line that made my blood go cold. You'd be perfect for my team. Not you'd enjoy this. Not have you heard of it. No, my team. I asked her slowly if this was a sales thing, like if she was actually trying to recruit me. She smiled even bigger and said, I don't like calling it sales. It's more like sharing. Then she pulled out another catalog. Different layout, more skincare focused. I looked at the drinks on the table and tried to calculate if I could leave without it turning into a thing. She was already circling products, telling me which one she started with, how it changed her mindset, and how no one has to live paycheck to paycheck if they just believe in themselves. I swear I felt myself dissociate a little. She asked if I ever considered breaking free from the system. I told her I was freelance. She said that wasn't true freedom. She asked how much I made per month. I dodged the question. She asked if I liked helping people. She said people like me, creative types, always made the best recruits because we already understood branding. That was the word she kept using, recruits, like I was joining a camp or a mission. She told me she could fast track me, said I could be a team leader in 3 months, said I had to face people would trust. At this point, I wasn't even pretending to sip my drink. I just sat there blinking while she showed me her starter pack and told me there was a small upfront cost, but I'd make it back in a week. I finally asked bluntly, is this a pyramid scheme? She laughed, not a normal laugh. The kind of laugh where someone's definitely done this speech 100 times and has a response ready. She said, "No, babe, it's a community." She leaned forward, lowered her voice like she was telling me a secret, and said, "This could change your whole life." I stood up. Didn't wait for dessert. Didn't even pretend to check my phone for an emergency. Just told her I had to go and backed away like she was about to pull out a third catalog and physically staple it to my face. She didn't even look shocked. Just smiled again and said, "Text me when you're ready to invest in yourself." I blocked her 5 minutes after walking out. Next day, she tried emailing me. I never gave her my email. The subject line just said, "Let's build your future." The body of the email, a PDF attachment titled starter-pack-breakdown.pf. That was it. That was the whole date. She lured me out with the promise of wine and vibes and tried to trap me in a pyramid scheme before the second drink hit the table. No thank you. Never again. I swear it started out normal, like not just okay, but actually decent. He was on time, held the door open, said he liked my shoes. He looked like his photos, better even. Hair slicked back, fitted jumper, smelled like something expensive. The restaurant was his idea. Some Mediterranean place with fairy lights strung above the tables and music soft enough you didn't have to yell over it. We sat near the window. He picked that table because it felt more private, which at the time sounded thoughtful. Looking back now, I think he just wanted fewer people behind him. His name was Jack, 31. Worked in sales. Said he was good with people. He had one of those deep voices that sounded like it belonged on a podcast, and he asked questions. Actual questions. Not just the usual, how's your week kind of stuff. It felt easy. Natural. He didn't look at his phone once, which in this day and age basically earns you a medal. I ordered chicken souvlaki. He went with the lamb. We were sipping wine, laughing about how weird online dating is when the food came. I remember everything about that moment. The waiter was young, maybe 20. Nervous hands, probably still new. He placed the plates in front of us. I thanked him. Jack just stared. The plate in front of him wasn't lamb. It was some kind of fish, I think sea bass. I didn't even register it at first. I was still unwrapping my cutlery. Then Jack's fingers clenched. I looked up and saw it in his face. Something had changed. His mouth tightened. His whole body went still, not like he was frozen, more like he was holding something back. I thought you'd just politely call a waiter over and ask for the right order. It happens. It's not a big deal. That's not what happened. He pushed the plate back slowly, then slammed both hands down on the table so hard that the silverware chumped. My wine glass wobbled. The couple at the next table actually flinched. He raised his voice, not yelling yet, but sharp, and started demanding to know what this was, why they'd mess up his order. The waiter came rushing back, apologizing immediately, clearly flustered. Tried to explain that the orders had been mixed up. Said he'd fix it right away. But Jack wasn't having it. He stood up, loudly. Started going off about how incompetent people shouldn't work in food, how it wasn't rocket science to get a simple order right, how he came here to relax and not be treated like garbage. Every word got louder. People were staring now, like full on, heads turning, phones hovering kind of stares. Even the staff at the front desk looked frozen. I tried to calm him down. Told him it wasn't a big deal, that we could wait, that mistakes happen. He didn't even look at me. Just kept glaring at the waiter, who looked like he was about to cry. Then he slammed his napkin down and muttered something under his breath. Something I didn't fully catch, but it sounded nasty, not just angry. Like venomous. The manager came over at that point. Older woman, maybe in her 40s, very calm, tried to defuse the situation, offered to count the meal, apologized again. Jack didn't sit down. He just stared at her for a few seconds, chest heaving, like he was deciding whether or not to blow up even worse. Then, without warning, he laughed, like a sudden, dry, mocking laugh. Said something about finally getting service, then sat back down slowly. His hands were still shaking. The staff disappeared fast after that. I'm guessing they were terrified he'd blow up again. I sat there frozen, appetizer untouched, fork still in my hand. I didn't know what to say. My pulse was thudding in my ears, and I was trying to figure out if I should make an excuse and leave, or if that would somehow trigger something else. Jack looked at me like nothing happened. Started asking me if I liked the wine. I blinked. Told him it was fine. Forced a smile. My throat was dry. He started eating like nothing had happened. Just cut into his lamb. They were made it in under 10 minutes, which was probably the fastest that kitchen's ever moved, and talked about this Netflix show he'd binged the night before. Like we weren't sitting in a restaurant where half the room had watched him nearly throw a tantrum over the wrong dish. I picked at my food. Couldn't taste any of it. My body was still tight, like it was waiting for the next explosion. After a few minutes, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Walked fast, locked the stall, took a breath, pulled out my phone and texted my friend. Call me in 3 mins. Emergency, please. She called right on cue. I answered while walking back to the table, holding the phone like I'd just gotten tragic news. I told him my flatmate's cat was sick. I know, weak excuse, but I couldn't think straight. He looked annoyed, but he didn't argue. Just muttered, of course, under his breath and waited over the waiter. Paid in full, no tip. He walked me outside. I said thanks for dinner. He leaned in for a hug and I panicked. He gave him a weird one-arm side hug and stepped back like I was late for a train. Blocked him the second I got home. Next morning, I had a text request from an unknown number. You were really sensitive last night. Then, don't waste people's time if you can't handle real energy. Blocked that too. It still messes with me, how someone can flip like that. 1 second he was charming, the next he was turning a restaurant into a war zone over fish. And the scariest part, he never thought he did anything wrong. It started like any other date. Matched with her on Hinge. Her name was Clara. Not a ton of pictures, just a few grainy ones, mostly from far away or with filters, but she seemed sweet in messages. Said she liked poetry and old horror films. Mentioned she was trying to get back into dating. She wasn't overly flirty, not weird or pushy. A little quiet, maybe, but that didn't bother me. After a week of messaging, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said sure. She picked the spot. It was this tucked-away cafe downtown I'd never been to. Mismatched wooden chairs, plants hanging from the ceiling, shelves stacked with secondhand books no one touched. The kind of place that felt like a living room, cozy in a way that made you want to whisper. I got there first. She walked in a few minutes later. Long hair, long coat, soft voice. Prettier in person than in her filtered pictures. But there was something off about her. Not bad, not dangerous. Just flat, like she was rehearsing every movement. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. In her eyes, they didn't blink enough. Still, I tried to be polite, made small talk. She laughed at the right times, asked normal questions, sipped her tea slowly. But the stillness was there, this quiet intensity, like she was observing me more than talking with me. Then things started getting weird. She mentioned where I lived, not in a vague, what area are you from way. She named the street. I froze. Asked how she knew. She laughed and said, oh, I just remembered it from something you posted. I racked my brain. I'd never posted my address. Not on any dating app. Not even on stories. I barely even took photos near my place. Maybe she'd seen a street sign in the background of a picture. Maybe she guessed. Still, the specificity made my stomach tighten. Then she said she liked the little corner shop near me, said they always had the good strawberry water. That shop doesn't have a name. It's not on Google Maps. I only ever go there after work, usually in sweatpants with headphones in. I've never once mentioned it online. I smiled politely, but something crawled up my spine. A few minutes later, she brought up my job, which is fine. It's on my profile. But then she named the building. The actual building, not just the company. The floor. She said it was cool how the meeting room had that green couch. That couch is tucked into a corner. You can only see it if you're inside. I didn't say anything, just nodded, heart thumping. Then she said she thought it was so sweet how my coworker Mike always buys everyone coffee on Fridays. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Because Mike doesn't post at all. His Instagram is private. He's not tagged in anything. I don't have him in any of my photos. I have only known him for 2 months. There's no way she could have known that. I asked how she knew, tried to make it sound casual like I wasn't rattled. She brushed it off, said, "People talk. You can learn a lot just by paying attention." Then she reached into her bag. I thought she was grabbing lip balm or her phone, but she pulled out a small notebook. Old looking, creased edges, faded black elastic band. She slid it across the table toward me like she was offering a gift. I didn't touch it. She told me she likes to keep notes, said it helped her remember details about people she cares about. That word, cares, hit me like ice water. Finally, I opened the notebook, just one page. At the top, my name, underlined. Below it, my birthday, my email handles. A list of usernames I'd used on old forums I hadn't touched in years. Names of people I followed. A blurry photo of my dog I posted once, 2 years ago, then deleted. She'd underlined it. Next to it, Golden Retriever mix, adopted July 2021. I stared at the page, throat dry. She watched me calmly, hands folded neatly and eyes unblinking like this was her version of showing interest. There were no giggles, no just kidding. She asked if I wanted to go for a walk after. I told her I had to leave. She tilted her head, confused. "You're not mad, are you?" she asked, like she was the one being vulnerable. I stood up, told her it was getting late. She asked if I wanted her to walk me back, said she already knew the way. That's when every instinct in my body screamed. I left. I didn't head straight home. I walked around the block twice, watching reflections in the shop windows to make sure I wasn't being followed. Eventually, I called a cab, gave a random cross street a few blocks from my place, and walked the rest of the way. When I got in, I locked everything, double-checked the windows, sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, heart still racing. That night, I went through every account I had, deleted old posts, changed usernames, scrubbed anything even vaguely personal. I barely slept. The next morning, I had a message from her. "I think we really connected. You're safe with me." Then another. "You look tired when you got home. Get some rest." I hadn't told her I was tired. I hadn't posted. Nothing. I blocked her. Everywhere. Deleted the apps. Told work about it just in case. Switched my shift schedule for the next few weeks. It's been a while now. I haven't seen her since. But sometimes when I leave my building, I pause before turning the corner, just for a second. Because the worst part isn't the notebook. It's that I don't know how long she'd been watching. And if she ever really stopped. I didn't even want to go out that night. I remember that part clearly. My head hurt from work. I hadn't eaten all day. And the weather was doing that gross, cold drizzle thing that ruins your shoes. But I said yes because the guy seemed decent. His messages were normal. No weird emojis, no questions that made my skin crawl. Just chill. He worked in marketing, liked live music, said he was big on good food and better company. I mean, yeah, it was a bit cringe, but not enough to say no. He picked a place. Some bougie Italian place uptown I'd never been to. Candlelight, white tablecloths, the kind of place with 5 waiters per table and prices you have to squint at. I considered canceling the second I saw the menu, but I'd already committed. I figured I'd order light, get through the meal, and call it a night. He showed up 10 minutes late, which normally would annoy me, but he came in smiling, slightly out of breath, and made a joke about his Uber driver being more obsessed with Taylor Swift than his ex. It landed. He looked a bit more polished than in his photos. Button up, nice watch, smelled like something expensive. He was charming, quick, good at making eye contact. The type of guy you assume is either an investment guy or a bartender that lies about being an investment guy. I ordered a pasta and a glass of wine. He ordered starters for the table without asking. Fancy stuff. Carpaccio, burrata, olives I couldn't even pronounce. Then came the cocktails. He ordered 2 before I'd even finished my first. Said I had to try them. Said it was his thing, introducing people to good drinks. The food was good. I won't lie, it was really good. And for a while, I almost forgot I was on a date with someone I barely knew. He talked about travel, about his love for Tokyo. Said he wanted to move there one day, but could never give up Italian food. Said I had a good vibe, whatever that means, and asked if I believed in chemistry. Again, cringe, but I let it slide. Then came dessert. He insisted, ordered 2. More cocktails. Espresso martinis this time. I was already full, but I just nodded. The waiter kept checking in, and he kept waving them off like he owned the place. Somewhere between the tiramisu and the second espresso martini, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Nothing dramatic, just needed a break. I took my phone with me and did the usual. Checked texts, snapped a mirror selfie I never posted, stretched my neck because my earrings were too heavy. Maybe 3-4 minutes tops. When I came back, the table was empty. At first, I thought maybe he went to the bathroom too, or stepped outside to take a call. His drink was still there, half full. Jack had gone, though. No phone on the table. No wallet. I sat down and waited. 2 minutes. 5. 10. That's when the waiter came over. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd already seen it coming. He asked if we'd be paying cash or card. I blinked and asked if the guy had said anything before leaving. The waiter shook his head and held out the bill. $250. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, just because my brain refused to register it. I looked at the receipt: starters, mains, desserts, cocktails, 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 stuff I didn't order, stuff I didn't touch. I told the waiter there had to be a mistake, that the guy I was with must have gone to the restroom or something. He nodded politely, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I called the guy. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. Checked the app. He'd unmatched me. Full on disappeared. The waiter came back with the manager. Both of them super calm, overly polite, trying not to make a scene. Said they understood, but someone had to settle the bill. I ended up using my emergency credit card, the one I keep for broken phone screens or emergency travel. My hands were shaking the whole time I typed in the PIN. I couldn't even finish the water on the table. Just got up, coat in hand, and walked out into the cold. I didn't cry, not then. Just walked fast toward the train station, ignoring every text coming through. Told my friend what happened, and she was already yelling over voice notes. Said she'd seen a TikTok about this kind of scam. Guys booking expensive dinners, loading the bill, then dosting mid-meal so the girls left to cover it. Thing is, he didn't look like that kind of guy. But I guess none of them do. I never saw him again, obviously. But a few weeks later, someone followed me on Instagram with a private account. No bio, no posts. Just a profile pic of a steak. Blocked it. A week after that, I had a weird text from a number I didn't know. Just said, "Still love a good tiramisu." That's when it hit me. He didn't just leave. He watched me pay. Maybe from across the street, maybe through the window, but he stayed just long enough to enjoy the show. And that's what stuck with me. It was supposed to be a grown-up date. That was the actual phrase I used when I told my mates I was going. Like a real adult dinner, proper restaurant, cloth napkins, reservations needed. No takeaway, no barstool awkwardness, no shouting over music. Just 2 people sitting across a table like they had their lives together. I'd been talking to her for about a week. Her name was Tara. Her profile gave off this high-standard kind of vibe. Lots of solo selfies in expensive dresses, captions about self-worth, and knowing what you bring to the table. She made it clear early on that she didn't do coffee dates. She wanted class. Fine. I booked somewhere nice, a place I'd only ever been to once before for someone's birthday. She showed up looking exactly like her photos. No filters, no tricks. Black dress, heels, perfume that made me forget how cold it was outside. She smiled when she saw me and kissed me on the cheek like we'd met before. I liked that. It felt confident, not fake. The start was normal. Better than normal. She was funny in a dry way, told me I had safe eyes, and joked about the couple behind us that hadn't spoken since they sat down. She complimented my jumper, the one I wasn't sure about wearing. I started to relax. Then the wine menu came. That's when it all shifted. I wasn't trying to impress her with my wine knowledge. I'm not a sommelier. I just like red with pasta and white with chicken, and I usually pick based on price and labels. But she handed me the menu and said, "You choose. I want to see what kind of man you are." So I picked something in the middle, not the cheapest and not the most expensive. And when the waiter came over, I read it out loud. I don't even remember exactly how I said it. It was something French. Maybe I got this wrong. Maybe I dragged a vowel. Whatever I did, it was small, barely noticeable. But the second I said it, I felt the air shift. She tilted her head. And then she said in a voice way too loud for the moment, "Excuse me." The waiter paused. I blinked. She repeated the wine name, the correct pronunciation, slowly like I was a child. Then she turned to the waiter and said, "We'll have that if he can handle it." I laughed nervously, said something like, "I guess I butchered that one." She didn't laugh back. She sat back in her chair, folded her arms, and just stared at me for a few seconds. Then she said, "I am like being humiliated." I didn't even know what to say. I asked what she meant, and she said I was mocking the language, that it was embarrassing, and that she didn't tolerate disrespect. Her voice was rising now. People were starting to turn their heads. The couple behind us stopped eating. I tried to calm her down. Told her it was just a mispronunciation, that I wasn't trying to offend anyone. I thought maybe she was joking. Maybe this was some twisted humor I didn't understand. Then she stood up, loudly, and said to the entire room, "This is what abusive men look like." Time slowed. I stared at her wide-eyed while half the room just froze with forks midair. One guy at the next table half rose from his seat like he was preparing to step in. I started stammering, tried to ask what she was doing. She pointed at me and said, "He thinks it's funny to belittle me. In public." I wasn't angry, not yet. Just confused. Utterly and completely confused. I told her I didn't belittle anyone, that I didn't even understand what was happening. She said I was gaslighting her. That word, gaslighting, it hit the air like a slap. Someone in the back audibly whispered, "Jesus." The waiter who'd brought the wine looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. She grabbed her coat in one sharp motion and stormed off. Didn't touch the wine. Didn't touch the food. Just left. And I was left sitting there staring at a full glass of wine I suddenly had no interest in drinking. The manager came over about 10 minutes later. Quiet, polite. Asked if I was okay. Said they'd seen things like this before. I didn't ask for details. Just paid for both meals. Yes, both. And left a tip too big for a dinner I didn't even eat. When I got home, I checked the app. She'd unmatched me already. The next day, I got a message request on Instagram. It was a burner account. No followers, no posts. Just a single message. "Still laughing at women I see." Blocked. Later that week, I found out from a coworker that the same girl had pulled something similar with one of his friends. Same script. Minor mistake. Public meltdown. Public accusation. It wasn't a one-off. It was her thing. I still don't fully get it. Whether it was some twisted performance or power thing or just her version of a test. But it was real, and it messed with me. Now, every time I read a wine menu, I think twice before I speak. Not because I care about the pronunciation, but because I remember the way that room went silent. How one wrong syllable turned into a scene. How quickly a quiet dinner turned into a spectacle I couldn't escape. It wasn't supposed to be a big thing. Just drinks. One drink, actually. I'd made that clear when we messaged, that I was busy the next morning, that I didn't want to be out late, that I had plans. I didn't. His name was Jordan. Normal enough profile. Smiley pics, kind eyes, one of those little bio jokes about being the human version of a golden retriever. I figured he looked safe. Not exciting, but safe. We met at this pub not far from my flat. I always choose spots close to home just in case I need to dip. You never really know. Jordan was already there when I arrived, sitting in the far corner like he was trying to be low-key. Same as his photos, maybe a little older looking, but not in a bad way. The date was fine. Not amazing, not terrible, just fine. He didn't make me laugh, but he wasn't boring. Talked a bit too much about his coworkers, which felt weird for a first meet, and had this habit of answering questions before I finished asking them, like he already knew what I was gonna say, that kind of thing. But still, nothing that made me immediately regret it. He didn't ask anything creepy. Didn't make comments about my body. Paid for the drink without being weird about it. Even walked me part of the way home. I told him I was good to go alone once I turned onto my street, and he didn't push back. Just said he had a good time and hoped we'd talk again. I went inside, kicked off my boots, hid my dog a tree, and figured I'd survived another mad date. Then things got strange. I opened my phone and saw he already messaged me. Literally 3 minutes after we said bye. It just said, "Get home safe." Weird timing, but whatever. I responded with a thumbs up. Didn't feel like talking more. Later that night, I took my dog out for one last walk. Just the usual loop around the block. Same time I always go, hoodie on, no makeup, headphones in. It was cold, so I was walking quick, just trying to let him do his thing. That's when I saw him. Not clearly, just a silhouette. Across the street. Standing just behind one of the windows on the opposite side of my building. Lights off, just barely visible between the curtains. I didn't think it was him at first. Just figured it was a neighbor watching TV or something. I kept walking. Next morning, I got another message from him. Cute dog, by the way. I hadn't mentioned my dog. No pics. No name. Nothing in the chat before. I kept all of that private on purpose. So I replied, asking how he knew I had one. He said, "You were walking him last night when I got home." Okay. Could have been a guess. Maybe he drove by or walked down the street. But the way he phrased it made something twist in my chest. It didn't sound casual. It sounded like he'd been watching. Later that day, I went outside and just stood there. Across the street from my flat is a row of old brick houses. Most of them have curtains drawn all the time. A few have potted plants. One has a weird gnome in the window I always joke about. I'd never really paid attention to them beyond that. But now I was looking. Closely. And there it was. One of the second-floor windows directly across from my bedroom was cracked open. A red hoodie hung on the back of a chair. And sitting on the windowsill was a small pair of binoculars. Just sitting there, not hidden, not subtle. That was the moment my stomach dropped. I went back through our messages. I had never told him where I lived. Not the street, not even the neighborhood. But he knew. He definitely knew. The more I thought about it, the more things clicked. The way he answered questions before I asked them. The way he knew I didn't like beer, even though I'd only mentioned that once in a comment reply on my private Instagram months ago. The way he said I always looked calm. I started to spiral, pulled up my socials, scrolled back through my photos, tried to figure out what he'd seen, what I'd posted that could have led him to me. And that's when I saw it. A selfie I'd taken on my front step. From months back, captioned with something dumb like cold girl things. Nothing revealing. But in the reflection of the door, his building, clear as day, behind me, I'd never noticed it before. He'd been watching me walk my dog. For months. Probably saw me post that pic and use it to match with me. Maybe even made a new profile, and I, idiot me, had agreed to meet him. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the blinds closed. Sat on the floor with the dog and just stared at the window, waiting to see if he'd move. He didn't message again. I blocked him anyway. Reported his account. Told my friends everything. Saved the screenshots. Thought about going to the police but couldn't even figure out what to say. I went on one date with this guy and now I think he's been watching me from across the street. No proof. No crime. Just this horrible crawling feeling in my skin every time I open the curtains. I moved 2 months later. Haven't walked that block since. It started off casual. We matched on Hinge after a few back and forths. Nothing crazy, no spark that lit up the screen or anything, but she was cute and seemed chill. Her name was Sarah. Short hair, big glasses, kind of artsy looking. Said she liked horror movies and hated small talk. I figured that meant she'd be easy to get along with. We messaged for a few days. She was a little intense sometimes, like she'd reply instantly and double text if I didn't answer quick enough. But I brushed it off. People get nervous. It didn't seem like a red flag at first. If anything, I thought she was just into it. She invited me over after about a week. Said we could have some drinks, chill, maybe watch something. I offered to meet in public first. I usually prefer that, but she kind of talked me out of it. Said she didn't really like crowded places and that her apartment was super cozy. She made it sound like the date was already happening, like it was a done deal. I figured whatever. I've gone to stranger places for worse reasons. Her place was a tiny upstairs flat, tucked behind one of those older corner shops that sell vapes and milk and lottery tickets. The hallway smelled like damp carpet and fried oil, but her actual apartment was decent. Clean. Dim lighting, candles, some weird paintings, a bunch of blankets thrown over the couch like she was trying hard to make it look cozy. She was in this oversized sweatshirt when she opened the door, barefoot, holding a glass of wine. Said something about being glad I actually came, which again didn't really hit me until later. The first hour was all right. She poured me a drink. We talked about movies. She had this playlist on in the background. Old songs, all slow and kind of haunting. She sat real close from the beginning, like no hesitation, and kept touching my arm or shoulder whenever she laughed. It was more physical than I expected for a first date, but not over the top. Then it got weird. We were sitting on the couch halfway through this indie horror film I'd never heard of. I said something about needing to get going soon. I had work the next morning, and it was already pushing midnight. She paused the movie. Without saying anything, she got up, walked to the door, and locked it. Like, actually turned the deadbolt. Not in a chill, oh I forgot to lock up kind of way. It was slow. Deliberate, I watched her do it. Then she turned around and smiled, big, way too wide. Said I couldn't leave until I promised to go on a second date. I honestly thought she was kidding at first. I kind of laughed awkwardly, like you do when someone tells a joke that doesn't quite land. But she didn't laugh. She sat back down way closer than before and kept staring at me, holding her glass of wine, tilting it like she was waiting for an answer. I said something like, yeah, sure, just to get her to relax. But it didn't work. She started asking specific questions. What day would we go out again? Where would I take her? Would I message her tomorrow morning or later that night? It was like she needed confirmation right then and there, like she was setting it in stone. And I couldn't figure out why, but something about the way she was looking at me made my neck tense up. Not angry, not sad, just focused. Like I wasn't a person anymore. Like I was an object she already owned. I stood up and said I had to use the bathroom. She pointed down the hall and didn't move. As soon as I got in, I locked the door, turned on the fan, and just stood there staring at myself in the mirror. I didn't even need to pee. I just needed a second to think. Her place was upstairs. The door was locked. I didn't want to piss her off or make her feel threatened, but I also didn't feel safe anymore. I started wondering what else was locked. Could I even leave without a scene? When I came back out, she was still sitting there, still smiling, like nothing had happened, like I was the one being weird. I told her I really needed to get home. She just looked up and asked again if I was sure I'd go out with her next weekend. I nodded quickly and said, yeah, definitely. Even threw in a little fake looking forward to it, just to smooth it over. She unlocked the door but stood in front of it. Didn't say anything. Just watched me the whole time I put my coat on. I didn't even bother tying my shoes. I walked backward halfway down the stairs, pretending to smile like I wasn't planning to block her number the second I hit the street. I don't know if she thought any of that was funny, or if she honestly believed what she was doing was romantic. But the second I got home, I reported her profile. Not that it helped. A week later, she tried adding me on another app with a new name. Same pictures, same bio. I didn't reply, and I stopped going on dates at people's houses after that.